Felicia, Deborah is a Delta. Felicia is a Zeta. But and I know you, and both of you are very proud spokeswomen, for your organization. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not Greek. Janus isn't, but I'm like, I think that'll be a nice combination of Black women having a conversation. So yeah,
a great dynamic. It's a great dynamic.
Yes, thank you.
I wish I were. I did not go, I went to a northern white school. So
me too.
So see, we are none of the above because we did not have that.
But you're such amazing women.
I will say this, that most people, I was 20 years old when I pledged Delta. I was a 20-year-old New Yorker down in Florida on the campus of Florida University. And they were about what I was about. Dawn will tell you, I've known Dawn since she was born. And I took Dawn into the city for the first time where she cried when she saw homeless people. So we could talk. I mean, I have books in me that I just have not birthed out yet. But
yes, I know.
And now she is Dawn Hardy. So, but the key was that a lot of people don't know that with the Divine Nine, which is now popular because of Kamala Harris, the ladies like yourselves that are Black college educated women can still pursue whichever one of these sororities that you are interested in on a graduate level. And that's a little known fact that people just have no idea that it's possible. So 3 years ago, I lived in Suffolk County on Long Island. And we had a line of people that age range from 22 to 55. Wow. And there are I've seen other lines, women that were 70, women that were 80, women that were 80. So each one of our sororities have ways. And you see, I didn't say that you have to go one way. I'm saying that it's important for you to know that there are options for you still, that you can still reach those goals.
The sisterhood.
Yes.
Okay.
Did I miss anything, Felicia?
Huh?
What did you say, Deborah?
I said, did I miss anything, Felicia?
No, other than, mix and mingle when the COVID goes away and go out and meet the different organizations. And I would say, I would say for me, I joined where I felt I could relate. I joined where I felt the warmth and being embraced. And every time I saw those names on the president's and dean's list, I was like, hey, let me get what? I can do that. So, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to we're all Black women and we're all, in the same spot together. And so we have to help each other regardless of the color. Because when we take off our individual colors, it's still all chocolate.
Yes. Yeah. Because I'll tell you one thing. Black women are the people who got Kamala and Warnock and
that's right.
Our two senators in Georgia. Black women are the ones who got
Stacey Abrams.
Powerhouse.
Magical.
Absolutely. And all those, in fact, this is very much, obviously I wrote the book years ago, and I've been thinking about how to do a sisterhood around Sister Days. But when Kamala Harris did that nomination speech, where she said that she was standing on the shoulders of these women, and the women that she mentioned were all in Sister Days, then I said, oh no, this is why we have to talk about this. This is why we have to really know who we are. And I always say, and Dawn knows, that one of the things that inspired me to do this is that for all the years that I've been on the road speaking and meeting people and talking about, Black history and culture, women's history and culture, that inevitably someone after I finish that talk will come up and say, but why didn't anyone tell me? And they're referring to our history. They're referring to a sense of knowing who they are and where they've come from. And more importantly, understanding through that what their own power is.
Yeah.
And you see the grief, and frankly, from men too, because Sister Days is the third in a trilogy. I wrote Glory Days first, which was a panoramic kind of history, African American history, 2,000 years. I wrote Freedom Days, which was the story of the Civil Rights era, 1936 to 1976. And then I wrote Sister Days. So, you know, men have had the same experience. And just as a people, this need to share the wealth and pass it on.
Yes.
So that's what today is about. That's what this Sister Days book club is going to be about. I am just so thrilled that each of you has decided to join in this pre-adventure. It isn't often, even during the midst of COVID, it's about the distance. We don't get to do this, don't get to do that. But this imaging, this online imaging is something that I don't want to lose after COVID. You just don't get a chance to have this kind of intimacy up close and personal. You know, I'm standing at the front of a house and with a stage and barricades and all of that. And then this is, hi, I can touch Deborah, I can touch Dawn and Felicia.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And I'm going to kind of turn it over to you, because when Dawn and I first spoke, I had said, it would be great if I just had the opportunity, as I'm going into this, to speak to some potential members. And let me just say up front, you are all now members. As a thank you, you will be grandmothered in to the club. So you have the opportunity, therefore, of inviting one other person. So you'll see it, because this is the Sister Days mother-daughter or sister-to-sister friend book club. So we're asking everybody to join you can also join as a single, but to join as you and another woman partner.
Yeah.
And so you are each now, thank you, Sister Days mother-daughter or sister-to-sister friend members, and you'll be getting that information so you can think about who you want to bring in with you. But I am therefore going to turn it over to Dawn to get us set up. Yay!
Thank you, Janus. So I don't know if you ladies had a chance to look at the link or check out Janus' website, but I know that she is an Emmy Award-winning journalist as well as a historian, and then the author of 11 books. And Janus is celebrating, this is her 30th year in media. So Janus, can you talk to us a little bit about your experience and what you've seen as it relates to the rise of African-American women and our power in this country over the last 30 years?
Oh my goodness. Then you're calling on, actually, I'm going to start back even further than that. I'm going to start with the first African-American women's book club, which is, as far as we know, the first book club, period. And it was by African-American women let me look in my own book, Sister Days, so that I can tell you the exact date of it. And you have your book. So if you look at September 20th, September 20th. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you will see the Female Literary Association of Philadelphia. And they held their first, what they called Mental Feast on September 20th, 1821. Now that date is important because just shortly before that, I mean by months, is the Nat Turner Rebellion. And white America is going nuts that of the idea that people would actually fight back and say, you cannot terrorize me forever, forever and ever, amen.
Yeah.
And even though it technically was not successful in overturning enslavement, it was successful in awakening everybody to the potential. And why I'm starting to answer your question about our history as African American women bringing truth to power, bringing our power to fruition, is because that's kind of the date when we think of it having started officially. That is the beginning of Black women organizing.
Got it. Okay.
And when we have that first mental feast was published in the Liberator magazine. They had their own, not just bylaws, but they had their own constitution. And that being in the Liberator newspaper, it's before you knew it, chapters were spreading all up the East Coast in major cities, up the East Coast of the United States. What that becomes important for is that those are the same cities where then women begin to organize their own underground railroad networks.
Okay.
So they refer to freeing their minds. They refer to how they are having these mental feasts to feed their minds. They refer to the privilege they have of being Black women who are not enslaved, but the responsibility that they have to others who are still. And don't forget, at this period of time, any Black person who is enslaved who is emancipated or freeborn, probably has a relative who is in bondage.
Yeah.
So it's not remote, it's not philosophical, it's real. And so they feel that they have that responsibility. And so our organizing, once again, spread wealth. Our organizing really, in a practical sense, can be dated to 1821 and probably before that, because this is just the first time we know that it's formal, because they publish their story. And there too, we have the point. They say, he who tells or she who tells her story writes history. You write your narrative. You say who you are and who you intend to be. And interestingly, the first night of their meeting, who are they reading? They're reading Phyllis Wheatley.
Okay, yes.
From the Revolutionary War era, she was brought here enslaved, and they figured out that she must be 6 or 7. I mean, this is it's a disgrace. They've stolen a child from her mother, shipped her across to the Middle Passage to enslavement in the Americas. She arrives a sickly child. I mean, how could she be anything but? They assume that she is about 6 years old from looking at the fact that she still has her baby teeth.
Oh my God. Wow.
That is the fact of it. And poetic justice, she is bought by a couple, the Wheatleys in Boston, and they realized that she was a bad investment as a slave, but I'll put it this way, she became an amazing parlor trick. Because her knowledge and her capacity and her ability to, just write and speak and remember and learn this language and translate and all of that. So on that night in 1831, because she was recognized, because she spoke her truth as a little girl, she writes it down, and in 1831, these Black women are able to have their first mental feast with Phyllis Wheatley on the menu.
Oh
And
wow, I didn't know that. There's a literary award, and it's called the Phyllis Wheatley Award that that they give out at the Harlem Book Fair. One of my clients won it for her first novel.
She has institutionalized herself to the point of the United States. How she becomes this first published poet. No printer in the United States, even with the Wheatleys backing her, no printer would print her work. It was the term at the time was that anytime a Black person achieved anything, it was said that they were setting a bad example for slaves. And I love that. Setting a bad example for slaves by achieving something. So they had to take her to England to be published and then bring her books back here. I've actually held in my hand a copy of her book that was autographed. I wish I had it, but I mean, just the fact of holding it in my hand, knowing that she had held that very book was kind of all I needed. It has fueled me forever to have that kind of connection, you know?
So let me ask you a question. So did you hold that book before you wrote your first book?
No, I held it because my first books are actually the series that I did for children and continue to do for children, backpacks. Those are the first books that I wrote. It wasn't until 1990 that I began doing the books for adults. So actually, I do think, and 1995 is when my first book comes out. So I'm going to change that. Yes, I had held it before my first of these inspired moments of history for adults came out. I had. I was in an antiquarian bookstore, and they had it for sale. And I really thought about it, but to be honest about it, I think at that point, buying that autographed copy was something like in the 1990s, like $5,000. And to be honest, I had 2 kids in school. I was paying tuition. So I was just thrilled to hold it, but no, I did not buy it. Later on, though, I did buy a set of newspapers, 10 papers of Frederick Douglass's newspaper. And these were original copies of his newspaper, once again, roaming an antiquarian bookstore. And I saw just this print, in a bookstore, to see newspaper at the bottom of something. And so I asked about it, and they pulled it out. It was a collection of 10 newspapers that three of the Well, first of all, what I loved about the newspapers is something that is just priceless and precious in the few historic Black newspapers that we still have, which is the ads. And the advertisements really give us an amazing sense of Black entrepreneurism. In it is a history of Black entrepreneurism and Black entrepreneurs who also buy their own first homes. So, you will see all sorts of ads. You'll see people also petitioning to reclaim their family members. You see this panoply of Black life in these newspapers. But of the 10 that I had, it was interesting because 3 of them had a little, like the size of your finger, cut out in the newspaper. And I was saying, well, why would they do that? Why would anybody keep these newspapers and then cut it out like that? And I realized when I just happened to be doing something in my own home that these newspapers had been used to line a drawer. But why 3 newspapers to line a drawer? And it dawned on me, and I've been checking since. These newspapers were subversive. They were considered they were considered setting bad examples for slaves. They were considered to be undermining the American order. And so their survival of these newspapers is the fact that they've been hidden. Okay, so in that story, you just get this not only the history of our people, but the amazing creativity, courage, conscience, commitment. These are the pillars that I use for the kids of backpacks, and they absolutely work for adults too. Conscience, commitment, courage, creativity, critical thinking, and nonviolent conflict resolution. That's the epitome of what we're talking about in how we got over. Our souls look back and wonder how we got over. That is the epitome of what it's about. So, Dawn, a long answer to your brief question, but it is the story. It is how and why those women were able to come together to make sure over these last 50, 60 years, because that the modern African American leadership movement is formulated through the civil rights era. So we have the people like Amelia Boynton to thank, those people who were part of that voting rights movement. We have those people to thank. Those are the shoulders upon whom the women of 30 years ago, who were the first women to push to actually enter the public sphere as elected officers, those are the shoulders upon whom those women are standing, as we today are standing upon theirs. So it is an eternal chain.
I love that. And yes, newspapers. I would love to see the newspapers. At some point in our time together, I definitely would love to see the newspapers. So this book is 365 days. How long did it take you to research this? Because there's a lot of nuggets in here. So like, how long did it take? Because traditionally authors work on a book for maybe a year, 18 months.
Janus, you're muted.
Unmute yourself.
Without exaggeration, because this is the 3rd book in the series, I do say it took a lifetime. In practical terms, though, I would say, because my grandfather was a Garveyite. He was one of those African American men who was steeped in the liberation movement of Marcus Garvey, turn of the 20th century. My grandfather was a soapbox philosopher of Harlem days at Mount Morris Park, now renamed Marcus Garvey Park. He was not friends with, but he actually knew Malcolm X because of that experience as a soapbox philosopher. And he steeped his daughters in what he could find and learn about African American history, and they in turn, through him with his guidance, steeped my cousin and me. So that drive to know really begins. There is a story that my mother used to tell about me, and she said that when our family took a car trip up to Canada, when I was 3 at the time, And we got to the Canadian border, and the Border Patrol said, is everybody a citizen or, naturalized or whatever? And everybody said, yes, yes, yes. And supposedly, I spoke up and said, but no, we're not. And of course, that disrupted the whole thing because, and I said to her, but mommy, you said we were all from Africa. To which my father said, we were then, sweetie, but we're not now. But the Border Patrol wasn't buying it. And everybody had to bring out every suitcase, every passport, every piece of paper to validate that we all were legal. So the fun answer is that I've been studying African American history and culture since I was at least 3. My graduate degree is the nation's first graduate degree in Black Studies. I was fortunate to take that at Mills College in Oakland, California, because Mills College specialized at that point in independent study, and it was just the right time that I was there. I'm MA 70, so it was the 2 years after Dr. King's assassination. It's the height of the drive for San Francisco State is the touchdown point with Sonia Sanchez for this cry for relevance in education. And I am right across the road of peace in Oakland. It's also the time of the anti-war movement. In Berkeley is getting tear gassed like mad. Angela Davis is being arrested for something everyone knows she did not do. She is under threat of death penalty for something everyone knows she did not do. That's the climate in which I intellectually then begin to come of age and begin studying our history and culture. The first book, Glory Days, published in 1995, took me 2 years to write, but it was rooted in the fact that I had been collecting these books all this time. I had been in broadcasting for all this time. We could not at that point just go to a local library. You definitely couldn't go online and look something up, so forget that. But we could not go to local libraries because local libraries did not have books about Black people. And so the library that I had amassed personally, the library of having been in broadcasting and interviewing people and knowing other authors and having their books was invaluable. And then I also accessed the interlibrary loan system that was available at the time. So it took me about 2 to 3 years to write Glory Days, and then Freedom Days comes after that, and then Sister Days. And I should say as well that having launched Harambe, which was the first national book club for African American literature, really gave me the idea to do Sister Days, because our catalog I produced as a huge calendar that had dates in our history, and for every date there was a book. That was how I launched the book club, so that we would have a sense of not just our history, but our continuity, and these books that were there. And so when those catalogs began to gain traction is when the contract for Glory Days came.
I love that. I would love to see again in our time together what the calendar looks like. I think that that's a really great idea, to have a calendar with also referencing a book written by someone of color that we should read. I want to open it up and see if Felicia and Deborah want to ask you a question, and then I'll come back.
I always have a question. I am so taken with you in that I feel that what you're doing is really putting the Black women's footprint in solid. It's not in sand anymore. You're putting it in cement so that way it can be referenced and chronological, which is easy for a lot of people to read. A lot of people can't grasp things that are just thrown at them. You have made it like the yellow book of education, where we can then refer people and say, we know this book is very, very big, but we can pull out and excerpt political dates. We can excerpt educational dates. We can excerpt, there's so much that can be excerpted from this. When Dawn sent it to me, and Dawn, thank you for sending it. And then my daughter, because we're in COVID, she said, if you take that book outside, you can't bring it back in the house because we don't know where or how. So we have these Blu-ray lights. So I had to then buy it on Kindle so that I can then read it in the house and not have fear for my daughter not letting me bring anything from outside into the house. Long Island is like number one, we're at a 7-point-something% infection rate for COVID right now. So every step we take is, has to be sprayed down with alcohol, and it's really, I've never washed my hair so much. But anyway, that's another story. So your book has, when I got it, I said, let me read the birthdays of my sisters. Let me read the birthdays of my mother. Let me read what happened on those days of my daughter. And this book I presented it to a group last night. We had 2 chapters of the sorority that were getting together, and I presented your book there last night and said, this is a book. So you now inviting me to your, I'll say your 36 inches is really more than I could ever ask for. And to be able to continue with the archiving of our ancestral documents, my daughter and I have been researching, I think we're back to 1860 something, with being able to find some of our family members. So this is exactly what a retired woman needed to do. So I retired, but I got a new job the next day. So I'm not really retired.
So let me ask you something. So let me ask you something, Deborah. What is your birthday? What did you discover on your birthday? And then Janus, can you give some background as to that particular entry?
Well, with my birthday, I didn't read it because I wanted to, since I was asked by the author about my birthday, I said, okay, I will not read my birthday. I'll read everyone else's birthday. And then my daughter, ironically for Christmas, brought me a candle that is my birthday. I bought the New York Times from my birthday, 1960. So it's really perfect for me to hear from the author about my birthday versus me reading. So as soon as you wrote that in the little notes, I said, okay, I'm not going to read that. I liked the element of surprise. I like to see whether or not, and looking at my daughter's birthday as an example, and the notes in my mother's birthday, my daughter's birthday was about knowledge, May 29th. Okay. I take like crazy notes. And so no one could ever find my notes in my house. My daughter's a teacher. And so it's before her years. My daughter was, and Dawn will tell you, she's like she was born like 90 years old and then teacher. So what you referenced there was just so perfect for my daughter. My sister, November 14th, innocence, 100%. My mother, rising from defeat. My mother's mother passed when my mother was not even 2 years old. And she went on to have 11 children and graduate as valedictorian from her high school at 16, to get appendicitis and be out of college for a year and graduate from NCCC when it was still called North Carolina Central for Coloreds. And so everything that I've read, that's why it just gave me chills, that it was just so amazing. So amazing.
So tell us, what's your birthday? And then Janus, you can tell us what that entry is about.
Now, Dawn.
Well, and you don't
have to share the year if you don't want to. We just the date.
I'm 60 years old. I'm happy. So, no, I'm good. So 1960, November 21st, 1960.
Wow. Well, you have given me chills. Thank you so much. I mean, to hear what this means to you is really quite something for me. So thank you. You still have not read your birthday?
No, on purpose.
I will read your birthday. It was 1984. South Africa remained under siege by apartheid. The white minority government had alienated all but two allies, Great Britain and the United States. As President Ronald Reagan held that South Africa's problem was not apartheid, but that of a few troublemakers opposed to the rule of law. Nelson Mandela was in prison. Winnie Mandela had alternated years between house arrest, detention, and solitary confinement. These were the few troublemakers. That June, the two were allowed their first touch of hands in 22 years. What made that possible and what made necessary the negotiations that brought down apartheid, released Mandela, and elected him president was a process of unrelenting international agitation, including events like the one that occurred on November 21st, 1984. In a highly visible sit-in at the South African Embassy in Washington, D.C., those arrested, handcuffed, and jailed were Congressman Walter Fauntleroy, Trans-Africa founder President Randall Robinson, and Dr. Mary Frances Berry, proud thorn in the side of the Reagan-Bush administration, known as, quote, the woman the president could not fire. The first African-American woman chancellor of a major research institution, the University of Colorado at Boulder, in 1977, Berry had taken a leave of absence to accept appointment by then-President Jimmy Carter as Assistant Secretary of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. For her years of personal and scholarly activism in pursuit of human rights, Carter later appointed her to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Because she did her job too well, Reagan fired her. She filed suit and was reinstated. On Thanksgiving morning, the day after the sit-in, Berry called her mother. "Mom, I'm in jail," she said. "Well, it's a good cause," came the answer. Our roots run deep. The date, Wednesday, November 21st, 1984. The topic, civil rights, and the inspirational theme, collective responsibility. Happy birthday, Deborah.
You know, when you are able to relate to, it's almost like the stars are all aligned to make sure that each of us do the things that we're supposed to be doing. And the confirmation that comes is what then, you know, it gives you fuel to continue going.
Yes.
I just got, well, in 1984, I had just graduated college from Florida A&M University. And so that in and of itself was an amazing year. Then for you to say that to me today, I just got my articles of incorporation for my not-for-profit 2 days ago. And it's sitting here because I didn't have a chance to move it off the chair. But my company is called Voter Education 365 Incorporated. So your words, again, are chilling me in a way that the confirmation is undeniable. It's undeniable. So I'm glad I didn't read it before. I'm so
It's
glad I didn't.
our story. That's the thing. You know, I'm dancing, but this is our story. And that's why, I mean, you say the alignment, the sisterhood, the roots. My grandmother used to say, what is in the root is in the branches.
Yes.
And so thank you, Deborah.
Yes. Thank you. This is my second person is going to be my daughter. She's a reader like no other, educator. I wish she were in here with me right now, but then again, I'm glad she's not, because, you know, the moment that we have here, the four of us, is something that I'll never forget.
Wow. And congratulations on your nonprofit. We look forward to what you are going to do with that. We know that it will be something that is healing and energizing for us. So thank you. Show that binder again.
I started this, let's see, there you go.
Voter Education 365 Incorporated.
Yes. Because I have been, and that's what I alluded to when I said that when I became a Delta, it was because of the social action and social activism. As you know, Deltas were there on March 3rd, 1913, whether at the behest of the organizers for the suffrage march. And what was great about that is that that's something that I've always done. And Dawn will tell you that I have been, and my mother and my father before me, we've worked the elections for 42 years. I have been an election inspector and coordinator, part-time for 42 years. And so wherever I lived, I did it, whatever. And so registering people to vote and getting people the understanding and having forums and doing educational sessions that are educational mobilization, registration, and giving them the wherewithal have been what I've done for all these years. So finally, the pandemic gave me the chance to stop for a second. And I called LegalZoom because I said, I don't have time. I don't know when my time is going to be over. So I'm going to call LegalZoom so they can just do the paperwork for me and I'll just fill out the papers. And so when I called, they said, are you going to finish the application you started several years ago? So I had already called LegalZoom, forgot I had done that. And I said, no. This is a new day. So we're going to start a whole new application. And we're right now in the process of finalizing the board of directors and the bylaws, but we have the articles of incorporation, we have the EIN number. And when I said I retired from FIT in what I called a triple pandemic. And I know this isn't for me to just be speaking all the time, but the triple pandemic was that FIT had just gone through February a year ago. There were horrible scenes that were put in a fashion show that had oversized lips and oversized ears for one of the designers used. And it had traveled around the country and it was horrible press. And we were in the middle of
that.
We were in the middle of that first pandemic. And so then the only thing that stopped the conversation about that pandemic was COVID-19. So that happened in March. COVID-19 shutdown happened in February is when the fashion show happened. We had town halls and we were really beginning. We had the Black Student Union. I was on the Diversity Council. We had my department in student life, all of these different, and I was also it's just been 6 months since I've been gone, but I was the assistant treasurer for our union. And so I was in the conversation from many fronts. So March happened, school shut down March 16th. So that meant that the conversation about what had just happened took a backseat because now the pandemic is happening. And then now the pandemic is happening, and then the social unrest, because the peaceful riots were peaceful demonstrations were going on wonderfully. But as soon as the lights went down, then those people who had nothing but ill thoughts towards the movement came out and gave a negative connotation to what was happening in New York City. And FIT had to be boarded up. We were right down the block they were marching right past FIT. Luckily, we did not have to be there. So then that was March. Then we have George Floyd that happens in May. So looking chronologically, FIT was then able to not worry about one, because we have to worry, you have to put the fire out when the fire is burning. You don't go back to what's cooking slow, you go back to what's burning heavily, or it's an inferno. So then when they circle back, now it's the month of June and July, they're circling back because there has to be accountability for that which that happened in February. So it's like, we'll never forget, just like 9/11, you never forget. So the town halls began to happen. And I sat looking at my computer monitor, creating an area, and I said, what I love to do, I can't do looking at a computer. I've been at FIT 32 years. I created the volunteer program at FIT. I made it such that students were able to volunteer at a fashion show or a breast cancer walk, or 1,500 students in the first 2 weeks of school every semester. I created so many things there. I was the voter registration person for all of those 30 years. And to hear them talking about, that's all they were doing. They were talking about it. And I looked at them and I said, I didn't plan on saying this forum. I said, and I see that of the 35 people that we have here, we have the president of the university, we have my director, we have a whole wealth of individuals, the whole cabinet is here. So I'm going to tell you guys that I prayed the other day. And when I prayed, I never pray. I've never been the one that was able to pray all night. And, they said, oh, I tarried all night. I was in the closet. No, I prayed. And then I said, oh, well, okay, God, I don't have anything else to say. So I'm going to go to sleep now. But this particular night, I woke up the next day having fallen asleep praying. And the word was retirement. And this was in the first week of July. And I had worked the election during the pandemic in June. We had the presidential primary. It was in June. And I said, how can I not work the most consequential election of my lifetime? How can I not work this because I'm afraid of a disease? So I put on 2 masks, glasses, the shield, gloves. I looked like Naomi Campbell going on a plane. And so the key was, though, that I went, and then there was a woman who had obvious mental issues who wouldn't put a mask on. And this is when New York was the epicenter. There was no one else thought, they thought, oh, that's just something happens in New York. But June, it was the epicenter. And people were dying left and right around us. I mean, my husband's sister passed away. 2 of my brothers got COVID. My niece got COVID. Luckily, they survived. But I'm looking at this meeting and I said, I just prayed. And I think that this is the time. My mother always said, you have to know when to leave the party. She said, don't overstay your time. Leave on a high. Then I looked over and I had reached out to the Board of Elections here in Suffolk County years ago because I went to the Democratic National Convention and it was in 2016. And it was funny because one of my sorority sisters' mother is Lottie Shackelford, and she is the chairperson of the Women's Committee for the Democratic Party. And I just happened to know her because my line sister's mother. And so I would always say, I need to have your mother bring me where she goes. I said, that's all I do is election stuff. I'm geeked out, please. And she always thought I was kidding. But once the DNC was going to be in Philadelphia, which is right down the road, I called her. I said, look, Karen, you need to put me, where's mom? I just need to talk to mom. So she got me the credentials to be able to volunteer at the Democratic National Convention. I ended up bringing a friend with me, and we were there 2 days early to get the lay of the land. So I would be able to see and know where everything was before the shutdown. And at that time, I had a closer relationship with our county executive, and I got him tickets to go to events. He said, Deborah, how are you doing this? I said, what do you guys always say with the old boy network? I said, sometimes it's good to have an old girl network. So we went in, and then once we came back, I said, I really want to work for the Board of Elections. Tell me what I have to do. He said, well, you have to speak to such and such. I said, oh, I know him too. So I spoke to him. That was 4 years ago. They said to me, did you retire? I said, no, y'all can't afford me right now, and I can't afford to retire. But my daughter's at St. John's University. So no, there's no retiring right now. But when she graduates, we're on it. So it just so happened that everything happened at the same time. After July, I get a phone call from the Board of Elections asking me to come in for an interview. They said, have you retired yet? And I said, no, but I might. And I went in, I talked to them. I said, you guys are going to pay me half of what I'm making. So I'm only going to give you half of my brain. And I'm going to look at it as a retirement job and not changing career. I'm looking at it as a retirement from one and changing careers, doing what I want to do. And I would do voter education for free. So I'm now in my third career. I started in corporate, I went to education, and now I'm in government. And I'm doing the position I have now, legitimized what my plan was with Voter Education 365 by me being now an employee of the Board of Elections for Suffolk County. So you are so right. The way things happen, you can never have planned. And so at that meeting, I looked around and I said, I'm going to say this unexpectedly. Deborah Payton-Jones is retiring effective today. I said, Michelle, who was my director, I said, this isn't how I expected to say it, but in life, things happen the way they're supposed to happen, not the way you think they're supposed to happen. And Dr. Brown and the rest of the cabinet, I'm listening to you, and I've already been through this for 3 decades. And I am not going to sit through rhetoric anymore. I wish you well on all you endeavor. And I pray that you wish me the same, but effective today.
Well, Deborah, congratulations on that. Congratulations on, I didn't know all of that. And now I know we definitely need to discuss it, but congratulations with Voter Education 365. Like, I know you're about to do amazing things, because as a student who was under you when I was in college, and I got into student government for the 3 of the 4 years that I was there, I know how passionate you are about this, and I know how much it's important to the community of African Americans at large. So congratulations on your new change of career, as well as your entrepreneurial endeavor with Voter Education 365. Love you. So now, Felicia, Miss Mississippi, tell us, yes, Miss Mississippi. Felicia wants me to eat pig ears, but that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. But Felicia, do tell Janus when your birthday is, Miss Mississippi.
Let me first of all say congratulations to you, Deborah, on your new endeavor. Voting is something that's very passionate to me also, and voter education, I could talk about that all day. So congratulations to you. Just listening to you just reminds me of the fact that nobody does it better than God when it comes to timing and the way things that are done. And we're in certain places, and sometimes we wonder why we're in these places and why we're still here for so long in these places, but we don't really see that the entire time God is perfectly putting things in place and elevating us where we're supposed to go. So you sharing that just reiterates that and reminds me of, he does things differently. So that is so phenomenal. Congratulations to you. And now I want to say, first of all, Dawn, thank you so much. When I got this book, I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And for me, the Sister Days and 365 inspired moments in African American women's history. 365 inspired moments. Do you understand that to be inspired for 365 days by women of color, by sisters? We inspired 365 days. That stood out for me. I'm telling you, my heart is like, wow, I'm full just thinking about that and picturing that every single day, because every day we do inspire somebody in our lives, in our circle, and then the book cover, this beautiful chocolate woman here, looking like she's from the South, Dawn, I must say, with her hat on, that she's from the South. She's looking to the hills. She's looking to her future. She's standing there representing every Black woman that has come before her to me in this book cover. So I love this book cover. It is indeed an honor to be here in this place on today. Janice, I took a few minutes to kind of look at your bio and all the amazing and great things that you have done. And I was so excited about this that I was inboxing and telling a lot of my friends. And I don't think they really connected with it, but I was like trying to share it so they would understand what an honor this was, how much it meant to me to participate in this and to meet you and to learn about you. And I can just say that I wanted to tell you earlier, I look at you and I say, well, wow, my hashtag for her is awesome and amazing. And mine is goals. I kind of level up. Mine is goals. Okay. So, but I just wanted to say that along with the fact that my birthday, of course, now everybody's birthday is great, but this honorable day right here, this official holiday is August the 10th. 1966, August the 10th. And
Love
so
it.
I read August the 10th, and I will say to you that when I read it, I think I read it today is Saturday, so it may have been Tuesday, Wednesday, and I said, Matilda is an awesome one. She's a bad lady. Matilda is me, because I would have done what Matilda did here when she responded to this editor concerning his comments about women. You know, to kind of sum it up, he's basically saying, you know, women should not concern themselves with politics, with becoming educated, you know, with wanting, let's just bring it today, wanting to be in business, things like that. They are too focused on cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, and pleasing the man. Well, if I heard something like that or read something like that, Matilda would be my spirit animal person, because I would pick up my pen, or Dawn, you know me, I may go on a public post and just say, well, let me just set this straight. Okay, let me set this straight. So Matilda says, wait a minute, let me address you. And she was so polite and so kind. You know, she pulled out the attitude, but she sprinkled around the edges of it to let them know she did not appreciate what he had to say about women. You know, and so she was focusing in on, you know, basically saying, excuse me, why should women not be educated? That's me. Matilda may be my ancestor. She may be a descendant of mine. Why should women not be educated? You know, we are the ones that have to take care of your children. We educate them. We are the ones that help take care of the households. We are affected by the things going on in this time period, in this community. And why should we not be educated? And so I was like, this is so powerful, because you just look at how long women have had to fight for the right to be seen as intellectual, for the right to be seen as we are just as good and capable as men are when it comes to business, when it comes to standing up for the rights of others and for advocating. We're not just about cooking. I can cook a good casserole, but I can also budget this checkbook. Okay, so I kind of think that's what Matilda was saying. You know, I can take care of the kids, I can comb the hair, or I can do some braiding, but I can also go up in here and turn this whole entire business around where we profit, because right now, sir, you're in the negative, sir.
Oh my God, Felicia, I love that. Oh, you're so funny. Okay, so Janice, can I ask you, on the date it says self-worth, women and womanhood. Like, what was the motivation behind this particular entry?
Well, first of all, I'm just overwhelmed by each of you and the energy that you bring to this, and I'm just loving every moment. I want to just give a shout out for the cover, since you mentioned it, to Jonathan Green. That is our wonderful brother artist, and he is he's Charleston, South Carolina based.
Okay.
And you will see a lot of Jonathan Green's paintings, and they give an image of all of his paintings give an image of Black people like you so rarely see. So I want to just say who the artist was who did that. Now, as for Lady Matilda and her spirit daughter named Felicia, we we go to another place on that. It's important because people who have not yet seen the book, Matilda is writing to the first African American newspaper, Freedom's Journal, which was founded in March of 1826, I think it was, 1826, 1827. And she is writing a letter to the editor in 1827, August of 1827. So let's put that in context. So even there, we said, we all know that it said that Black people weren't allowed to read and write, which is true for enslaved Black people. But that doesn't mean that they didn't either. And I can tell you about a wonderful woman who ran a midnight school in which she taught people to read and write, midnight school, and then sent them out to write the passes and freedom papers that would help liberate others. So we did a whole lot of reading and writing, whether we know it or not. Matilda is wonderful because, yes, she is answering Black male chauvinists. And the thing is that, that even raises the issue of when we say we're equal, do you really want to be equal, Black men? Do you really want to be equal to white men who are oppressive and cruel? And Black women, are we really saying that we want our men to emulate that and bring that home? No. And Matilda is the one who brings it all home and says, will you allow a female to offer a few remarks upon a subject that you must allow to be all important? She's very polite, as you say. And she says, I hope you are not to be classed with those who think that our mathematical knowledge should be limited to fathoming the dish kettle. And she goes on from there to actually say, no, you don't get away with that. But interestingly, when she puts it in perspective, she reminds him that it is mothers who raise sons. Obviously, mothers raise daughters too, and fathers raise both as well. But the care and nurturing in his mind of children is completely rested with the mother. So she reminds him that a mother can't raise an educated son if she's not educated herself.
That's right.
And she does a take that if there ever was. That said, because African American women have known how to be miraculous when we needed to be, a whole lot of uneducated African American men and women have educated the scholars of today. So we have to pay tribute there too. But Matilda wasn't playing, and she just put it out there. And to the credit of Freedom's Journal, they published it.
Yes.
So let's remember that too.
Yes.
Just put it all in context. They actually published Matilda's letter. She probably was writing under a pseudonym, given that she was not only setting a bad example for slaves, she was setting a bad example for women. She was just a bad example of messing with the power structure. So, but
Felicia. Go ahead, James. I was going to say, Felicia, I know how to do a question about today.
Yeah, I was just going to say that she is also in the tradition of African American women speaking out, because the first known woman in this country to ascend the lecture podium to speak for women's rights was a Black woman, Mariah Stewart, in 1832 in Boston. So I'll just leave it there.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome.
Felicia, you had an additional question?
I did. And let me also add, Janice, I even went and looked up this article. I just wanted to see what the newspaper looked like. So
Yes.
I actually went and tried to see it. It was a little blurry, but that was awesome for me also. So I did find out it was volume 1, number 22, if anyone's interested. But
so then the first issue was March of 1827, because
yes.
It was a
Yes. So I wanted to also ask what you think that Matilda would write today, based on the events of January 6th.
Oh my goodness.
What would Matilda say to this newspaper today, other than a snap like nah? Okay.
I think Matilda might write her white sister, who's now gone to Florida, and say, get real. You know, get it, just get it together. First of all, you're an immigrant. So you have benefited a lot from the struggles of other people to have immigrants respected. You know, I think, the reason why I'm not saying her name is because that Trump administration, and I very rarely even say his name, is such a disgrace. It's such an affront to humanity, period. And the fact that they're still pushing it, they're still trying to keep it going. As we tape this, Republicans are still going to Florida to court favor with a disgraced man who unleashed a mob to overthrow the government of the United States. Yes. So Matilda, I think all the Matildas would see it as the United States manifesting what it really was to them and showing its colors in a way that we usually don't see and don't say, because then as now, the phrase was about greatness, even though you're enslaving millions, greatness, even though you're committing genocide against an entire continent of people, greatness, even though you were suppressing women. I think Matilda would know that she got it right, but that she had a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And may I also just ask your photographer, because your pictures, the photos in this book were beautiful, and they made me just even more proud to be a Black woman. And I'll say to you too, and this will end it for me, I wish that my grandmother was here, that I could share this book with her day by day for the entire 365 days. It just makes me a little emotional because I read this to her and I picture her being the cleaning woman at my school and all that she went through. So I'm going to stop there because I'm getting a little emotional.
Because you said that, I'm going to read this for you and your grandmother. This is from the introduction. And I really didn't think about this until what you just said. So this is, what is your grandmother's name?
Her name is Elizabeth.
What is her name?
Elizabeth.
So this is for Miss Elizabeth. On the days my grandmother would tire, her stories used up, her memories dim, I remember how she would croon to herself, I'd write a book, but who would read it and yet go on? From the collectivity of the stories of our grandmothers untold, and for all of their very great and very grandchildren, here, I hope, is the book they would have written. Here is their power, their strength, their pain, their ways, and their better days. Here are their woes and their problem solving, their laughter and their haughty, naughty ways. Here too are their stories, our stories, the ones we would put in our hope chest, woven into tapestries, knowing that we today are the ancestors of tomorrow, that Miss Elizabeth today has given us the gift of Felicia today, knowing that all of that is true. And as you read of these, our sister days, somewhere beyond our grandma's smile, somewhere beyond our grandpa's glance upon the docks of our day and look to the horizons their dreams help paint. For you to read, these are the stories they have told me to keep, the measure of our sister days, inspired moments to alter the view on both sides of the blockade, to alter the cadence of one who might not otherwise know that her place in this land was staked in Jamestown, Virginia, bought and paid for in 1619, long, long years ago, that her source has been channeled from a river called the Nile, her wisdom dredged at Timbuktu. Yes, my sister love, so begin our days. There was Boston, Nicodemus, and Mississippi, always Mississippi, New York and Nantucket, and on, and so we go on. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, Jen. That's okay. Get your tissue, Felicia.
Oh
that's
my
okay.
God. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Have silence.
So Janice, you know, I knew what the closing of the introduction was, but it's very ironic that the locations mentioned are New York based and Mississippi. Again, you know, divine planning, like this is divine, because I didn't know that. And I'm like, wait, Mississippi and New York. Okay, but represent, that's everybody here. That's everybody here. Deborah, you had a question?
I loved what I got to say. Mississippi. Always Mississippi.
Oh
so thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Ooh, if I could hug you.
Mississippi, home of the pig ear sandwiches.
That's right, doll. That's right.
Well, we're going to have to really think about that one. My father was a big pig foot eater. Every Saturday, he would eat his pig's feet, and he'd have his fingers like this because they'd be so sticky. But that's another story.
So, Deborah, you talk to Dawn later on and try to explain the delicacy of that later on.
I will say I can explain it. I've never partaken in it.
No, thank you.
I will say I do not partake, but my grandmother called them trotters.
Yes.
My father. Yes.
That's not my thing.
So what's wonderful, everything about today, Dawn, thank you so much. I'm so happy that you spread your wings. Another little tidbit about Dawn. Dawn would not walk across, when she came to New York City, she would not walk from the building 500 feet to the McDonald's. I had to make sure I had students that walked her over there. And then she has blossomed and has moved out of state. She moved into Brooklyn. So she's really, really always been her own persona. And I'm so grateful that she remembers all that poured into her. And that is an amazing way for people to be able to continue to live and love and laugh and be able to have their community a part of their life, no matter what we do moving forward. The 365 on mine, when I got the paperwork, very like days after I got the book, and I looked in the book and it was about 365 days, and my company was 365 days. So it's like it was just so amazing. And then in reading March the 5th, was it March? No, March the 3rd. In reading March the 3rd, one of the women wrote, and was it March the 3rd? Let me see here. Yeah. Yes, March 3rd, when I read that, from a white woman came this note: not one of the colored people was boisterous or rude, as with great difficulty we passed along the unprotected avenue. The difference between them and those insolent, bold white men was remarkable. The dignified silence of the colored people was a great contrast to those who should have known better. I thank them in the name of all the women for their kindness. Now, that is January 6th. That is BLM. So for them to be equating the BLM peaceful protests with the insurrection that happened on January 6th is another distraction and another tactic to make us not focus on what should be focused on. Had it been the other way around,
Right.
there wouldn't have been 400 arrests. There would have been 4,000 arrests.
Right.
There would have been 400 deaths, not one shot young lady from one of the armed security personnel for the Capitol building. So when
Deborah,
reading
what
that,
date is that? What date is that?
March 3rd.
March 3rd. Okay.
So when I read that, and then because I wrote down in my notes, I wrote, words that must be added to my, it's just, it was just so perfectly timed that the observations of a woman at that time, and not an African-American woman, not a Black woman, not a colored woman, the words of a white woman that was stated in that time for that occasion is exactly what happens normally in our lives. But there's very few people who will come to the forefront to make that analogy and to make those points made. It's always a squeaky wheel that gets the most attention. And those people that are out there spewing I can't even repeat some of the ridiculous statements. It's almost as though we're back to Arizona when we're looking at the aliens coming down in 1978. So okay, fine, they came. Where are they? Oh, they left. Okay, well then that's just like a house guest. They left. So there's no. I only wish that we had digital cameras and cell phone video back at that time, so we could have made sure that everything that was stated was so made up and concocted and distractions and just trying to get you to, we have to remember that we have to stay in our lane. Stay in your lane, because if you're staying in your lane, you're going to get to where you need to go. By veering off these dead ends, those are the distractions that people want you to then veer off to, so that you and your light will not shine. But no one can dim your light but you.
I love that, Deborah. So Janus, I'm going to point it back over to you, but I would like for you to speak and close us out with my birthday, but not so much the content of my birthday, but the words at the bottom, which really resonated with me, which are respect for one's power. So my birthday is March 14th. You guys know that already.
March 14th, Dawn's birthday. Well, it's the story. I'm going to switch the story a little bit, but it is the story of a woman named Mary Epps who escapes a plantation. But one thing I want folks to know is that it's interesting. If you saw the movie or read the book 12 Years a Slave, this is the plantation that she escaped, that he was on. The plantation that Mary Epps escapes is the Epps plantation that Solomon Northup was enslaved on, that we see in that movie. So it gives you a little depth. But the piece itself is about medical pontificating to justify slavery. When you get the book, you'll see it yourself. That's what it's about. And essentially, this doctor comes to the conclusion that for whatever ails Black people, the answer is to whip them to within an inch of their lives. And so the conclusion is, with medical expertise like this, is it any wonder that Blacks hold to their own secret remedies? Clearly, someone was crazy, but not Mary. Mary was free. Mary had liberated herself. and been fortunate enough to make it to freedom. I am going to end today, and I hate to end today, but I am going to end today with my birthday, January 11th. And I'll tell you, I'll read it because it's Tina Turner, but I'll tell you why afterwards. On January 11th, 1991, Tina Turner was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It sounds so special. It was. In 1960, before the act was called the Ike and Tina Turner Review, she was the lady with the incredible voice and legs. Then, boosted by the adulation of her fans, came the mini-skirted frenzy, the wigs, the whirling dervishness. There was also the private physical and emotional torture by Ike, her husband and partner of 15 years. Then, on July 1st, 1976, her rebirth day, Tina Turner got tired of being beaten down and lifted herself up from a Dallas hotel room with barely the clothes on her back, walked to the highway, and walked out on Ike Turner. She was shunned by the industry for the next year. Those who condemned her by saying that by walking out on Ike, she had walked out on the tour, they knew better. But with the misplaced priority that protects violent men who beat their wives, they were unlikely to admit it. In need of work, the truth was that Tina needed to work on herself. She needed time to heal. She did both by working small clubs in the United States and solid houses in Europe. In 1980, she relocated. In 1984, with less than 2 weeks of production, Tina, the pro, recorded Private Dancer. That landmark album went super platinum, winning Tina Turner 3 Grammy Awards and helping her make the super comeback of all time. In 1985, she joined in We Are the World, the record that raised unprecedented funds for famine relief. By 1988, her concert at a Brazilian soccer stadium garnered the largest paid audience for a solo artist in history. And so Tina Turner was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What a story. A personal and professional tribute to a woman of extraordinary character. More than a survivor, Tina Turner was a winner. Not only did the public know it, most important, she had come to that recognition deep within herself. The date, January 11th, 1991, the subject, music, and the inspirational theme, character. Yeah. Now, I read that date, and you can hear why. But I wanted to say that to me, the experience of writing the entire book, that's what the entire book is about. Because so often we look at these icons we have, icons of history, icons, current day icons, someone like a Tina Turner, and we look in her case at the costumes and the makeup and the glitz and all of this, and we forget to also own her humanity.
Yes.
And by not owning her humanity, we also take away our connection with her as a person, a human like we are. And in that, we take away our ability to see our own potential greatness. And so that to me is what this book is about. It's the real stories that make us whole, not just the strong Black woman and all of that, but the real stories that make us real, that make us whole, the things that we have been through, the things that we have not just overcome, but transcended, the things we're still working on transcending. And the last line, not only will the public know it? Most importantly, we will come to that recognition within ourselves. So, ladies, thank you so much. Sisters, sister love, thank you so much. I want to just say one thing. Felicia mentioned, she said the 365 days, and the 365 days are important. Indeed, there are 366 because there's even one for February 29th. But in order to do these books, I usually began with more than 1,100 dates that I widowed down to 3, based on 3 criteria: that it had, yes, it was an important date, that it had something to do with our ongoing story, a turning point, but that it had something to do with us intimately. What does it have to do with your life? Okay? But in that, it doesn't mean that the other 1,100 stories could not have also been in these books. Mm-hmm. And so what I want to say is that we don't only have 365 stories. We have an infinite wealth of stories that we as Black women have created over the millennia for ourselves. And in that, praise the bridge that carries you over.
Amen.
That sounds like Sister Days number 2. So it was a trilogy, but the trilogy had a baby, and the baby had 2 more volumes to make sure that we could incorporate all 1,100 of those stories.
And so, one of them is going to be Voter Education 365 Incorporated.
Praise God.
And the novel by Felicia. And the work that Dawn is doing to bring people together and magnify our voices. And our producer, Matt Mixon, it's going to be his date too. So thank you all so much for participating today.
I feel like she just blessed us, like your mother just gave you a blessing. You know, thank you so much.
Yes.